to EntrepreNINES. I'm John Wist.
And I'm Bonni Mace. We are two Enneagram 9s who took the big leap into the world of entrepreneurship at a similar time. And this podcast is a space where we are inviting you to laugh and learn with us as we work to build businesses with soul. This is episode 51. 51.
Hope you enjoyed episode 50, if you've listened.
It was fun.
Our celebration of 49 episodes up until then. So it was a lot of fun. And now kind of the elephant in the room.
We did it again. We did it again, John.
We're pretty good at taking unannounced breaks.
We are good at that.
We are getting really good at it. I will say,
gosh.
I think that this unannounced break is probably the most justified out of any that we've had so far. In the sense that it was like almost physically impossible.
There were times it was physically impossible.
Yeah.
Actually, most of the summer.
Most of the summer, it was physically impossible to actually do this. Right.
2 months.
So, Bonni.
John.
Tell us what happened.
Well, primarily it's my fault. So once upon a time.
Well, fault is a harsh word, but go ahead.
Okay. Once upon a time, there were two podcasters who had grand ambitions as their children's school year wrapped up.
Yeah, it was awesome.
And we created for ourselves quite the lineup of episodes to knock out.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last day of school came. They celebrated at a Baltimore Orioles game. Go O's.
Yeah.
And then shortly thereafter, I felt extremely ill. Like genuinely the worst I've ever felt in my entire life.
Yeah.
Got sick on Father's Day. So our kids got out of school on like June 12th or 11th or something like that.
Oh, yeah, I think it was the 11th. Mm-hmm.
Father's Day was literally the next Sunday. So we had these 4 days where we're like, let's kick the summer off with our kids' grade. It'll be awesome. Yeah. The first week they had a camps and it was like right down the road.
Oh, yeah.
Like right down there. So John and I were like, we can definitely podcast.
100%.
It'll be great.
Yep.
And then Father's Day, I cut down a tree. And tried to unearth a bush with my husband because that's what we chose to do. I don't know, everyone. And then we went out to dinner, and while I was at dinner, I was like, I think I'm dying here at this table. Like, couldn't finish my food, started feeling really bad. We get home and take my temperature, and I had like 102-degree fever, and that kicked off a solid week of high fever where I was trying to figure out what was wrong with me, and my doctor was trying to figure out what was wrong with me.
Yep.
Did all the swabs. Did a blood test, did the whole thing, and it was just like, we're going to give you some antibiotics. Hope for the best.
We don't know.
I don't know what this is that you have.
Good luck.
Yeah. And so then I go for like a follow-up about 2 weeks later when I was finally feeling better and everything. We redid the blood test, and my doctor's like, yeah, what was so interesting about your first blood test, which this one didn't get posted for whatever reason by my doctor's office. She's like, your white blood cell count was just like gone. Like it was bottomed out floor level. Whoa. And I was like, well, no wonder I couldn't even go to the bathroom. Like it was wild. It was really terrible. So that began the deterring of all of our plans for this and many other things. Yeah, I
was going to say. And then, you know, the summer just continued to happen, right? It wasn't like things stopped. And so, you know, there were camps and you guys took a long road trip to visit family.
It's true. 3.5 weeks. It was wild.
Yeah. And then you came back.
And you guys left.
We did. Yeah. We left also. We had a trip. Well, we had a couple trips this year that we made. So we had a couple trips that we went on. And we had, you know, the thing is like we had planned around all of these things primarily by like that week that you were sick,
so sick,
was like gonna be like we're hammering here to get some things knocked out. So really, that kind of derailed most of those plans. Now there were plans to come back sooner than we had.
In fact,
but Bonni, what happened then?
Well, John, just to make this summer extra chaotic on my poor husband.
Oh my gosh!
Here's some backstory that is unnecessary, but I'm gonna give. In like my marital roles, like one of the things that I excel at is transitions.
Yes.
So like major transitions.
Yep.
I set up all the systems. I get everybody through the transition. Like that's one of my strong points.
Yeah.
Then Mark Mace comes in and he is great at maintaining the systems I set up.
Yep.
He's on the new routine and he's good to go. So
Yeah.
he's a great maintainer, but I am the one that shakes things up. So I thought this summer, why not make his life miserable by being absent for both major transitions of the summer?
Yeah.
And I went ahead and I got pneumonia.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The first week of school.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I got sick the Thursday before school started.
Yep.
And like, again, 7 days of high fever and my doctor being like, what's going on? All your swabs are negative. That's so weird. And then finally went and got a chest x-ray and I raised my hands above my head to do the chest x-ray. And I was like, wow, I think I'm underwater. I cannot breathe. This is crazy. This chest x-ray is going to say some things.
Yes.
And it did.
And it did. Yep. Mm-hmm.
It did. Mm-hmm. And it turns out when you had pneumonia, you can't breathe, which is important for doing a podcast.
Well, yeah, that and like not having a fever and, feeling
giving
like
John pneumonia.
Well, feeling like actually getting off the couch,
right.
Things like that.
Right.
Yeah. So
but
there's lots of reasons for that.
Lots of reasons. And the recovery for pneumonia is super slow. So
it is slow.
That's been the other thing is it's like, this is the least winded I've been talking in a row.
Well, and I was going to say, you may have even heard like in our last episode and in this episode, like a couple like times where you like,
I sound rough.
Got to take a little break. Got to like hack it out for a second.
No, I think you cut those out of the last episode.
Yeah.
Lots of editing.
Or you, you can hear like your chest kind of a little tighter. So
guys, don't get pneumonia. Zero
pneumonia is a bad
stars.
thing. Bad thing.
Zero.
Yeah. So that in general has been what has upended our, for the most part, great plans.
They were great plans.
They were great plans.
Ambitious. We were feeling good.
We were feeling very good. Like and I think it was a continuation of how we walked into the year. Like we walked into the year with motivation.
We did.
And
lots of clarity.
Do a lot of things that we felt conviction about, a lot of clarity on what those things were and how we were going to get them accomplished. And for the first half of the year, I think we did really great.
We did.
So
I'll lean into that. Go us.
Yeah.
We started a video podcast.
Yeah, we did video. Just about a year ago, we started publicizing for Work Like a Nine, and we carried out Work Like a Nine. We had some thoughts and ideas about how to grow that, and honestly, like that also got kind of derailed because of some of that too. Was also like we had a trajectory for that, so it's just been it's been a lot, Bonnie.
A lot to learn.
It's been a lot.
A lot to learn.
So some takeaways from our. As you put it, SOS summer.
SOS summer.
Yeah. What are you walking away from this summer with?
One, I think my biggest lesson is just sort of like a continued posture of surrender and being like, there's so much stuff that's out of my control. And I think when you walk into starting a small business, especially like as a solopreneur, you think like, I'm going to make my schedule, everything. Like you feel like you have control of so much.
Yeah.
And then in my case, like my body was like, absolutely not. Yeah. And this is one thing I've talked about with Mark and like even my spiritual director last time is I was like, what's super frustrating is I was starting to like hit all of my marks on all cylinders, right?
Yeah,
I was exercising, like I had good plans and ambitions for like my business. We had ambitions for the podcast. Like there were all these things falling into line both times that I got really sick.
Yeah.
And then there was nothing I could do about it.
Yep.
It was like there was no time to catch up.
Yeah.
There was no time to adjust. Yeah. Like in both cases, it was just sort of like, well, this is how it is. Because as soon as I felt better in June, it was like time for us to go on our road trip. Like we were close to not going.
Razor thin. Yeah.
Between me and like my son got his tonsils out too. So that was like another big hurdle. But like, so we managed to get that trip in, but that meant like prioritizing the trip meant deprioritizing my business.
Sure. Yeah.
And like, that's the trade-off that I wanted to make coming into starting my business was to prioritize my family and deprioritize my career. For lack of a better term. Not necessarily deprioritize. That's probably not the right word, but like put that into greater balance because
get your priorities set up differently than they have been.
Yeah. So it doesn't like, it's like not that it's not important, but where we were before, it was like work and career things were sort of overshadowing everything we could do as a family. And what my family needed. And so It feels in line, but it also feels like extremely humbling and annoying to be like, because I am a solopreneur, when my body does not work and I have like wild brain fog because I've been running a high fever for 7 days, turns out it takes a long time for your brain to come back from that.
Yeah.
Like everything stops and I just have to be okay with that. And there's, I mean, to cancel meetings and apologize. There's just a lot of humble pie.
Which it reminds me also that something that we've shared, that you and I have shared, not on the podcast yet, but this summer has been like our appreciation and thankfulness for our spouses' jobs that supply health insurance.
Amen.
Because we don't have them. We don't have that. So, you know, just but also the flip side, right? You know, and we've talked about this too, and we've talked about it. I know both of us have mentioned this to other people, like what that means is our businesses sometimes take a backseat because if there's somebody who is going to jump in for childcare, it's going to be one of us for our own kids. Yeah. Because our spouses have jobs that provide benefits. Yeah. And that's just like a reality that makes you kind of view this whole thing a little bit differently. And I think helps other people understand. Like when you tell that to people, like, I don't know what, I think I've told a couple of people and they're like, oh, that makes sense. Yeah. I mean, it's like, okay. Yeah. Great. Like that makes me feel better because now I don't feel like a crazy person. I probably
get that assumption as a default more often as the woman in the relationship. It's people are like, how's your little side hustle? Like that's already how people approach me about my business. Yeah. And so, and I mean, it's not untrue, but I don't have to like course correct people's expectations usually. Yeah.
Frustrating that that's the assumption. Yeah. So,
just this weekend. So, are you still doing that? Are you home with the kids? Are you still trying to do something else? I was like, I'm trying. Thanks. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. But I was just thinking back to the double-edged sword of flexibility.
Yep.
Is also just this like, you stop working for somebody else for the flexibility, but then also the flexibility means this sort of thing happens.
Yes. Yeah. So it's tough, but it's, I think, almost in some ways like comforting to have that reality in place, you know, to be like, oh no, this is just the role I play in this season.
And it's a privilege. Yeah. Like that's something I also recognize is that there's maybe some like EntrepreNINES listening who are like, man, I wish. Yeah. You know, like I wish this could be. And like your flexibility in your business has to come to also carrying a job that offers a steady paycheck. So like you're building that at the same time or whatever. So I recognize like that's something I try to keep into perspective for myself too. It's just like being able to build a business like this is a privilege because it would be nice to have more money and have more steady income. Yeah. But also the benefit that we're getting with like the flexibilities.
Right. There's benefits in both directions. Yeah, for sure. Something that I think I've learned this, besides that, something I think I've learned this summer is, you know, because my ability to create was still there. Yeah. Because I wasn't deathly ill. But you know, and I thought multiple times about, you know, setting up a camera and recording an episode by myself and stuff like that. And just every time I kind of felt like a resistance to do that. And it wasn't, I was saying to Bonni before we started recording, it wasn't just about the podcast. Like it wasn't just creating for this. It was kind of a resistance to creating in general. And it actually, now that I think about it, it goes back to the spring because I had been doing kind of like a weekly vlog and feeling really good about it. And then all of a sudden it just, I don't remember what threw me off that schedule, but something did. And it was just like, you know what? Something doesn't feel quite right now about trying to re-kick this into gear. And I feel like I felt the same way about the podcast in the sense that like, I don't really have like, there's multiple things I think. Like number one, like it was a busy summer, even without sickness in our house. Like it was a busy summer. In a lot of cases, it was that, you know, I'm spending most of my time with kids. Yeah. You know, versus actually being able to do work. And so when I have time to do work, I kind of have to work. Yeah. Like I kind of have to like buckle down and just, I was editing a lot this summer.
The projects are coming, which is great.
Yeah. And so it was like, I just need to get this done. And so there was some of that involved. But then I think also it was like, I don't I feel like there was a little bit of the, like, joy lost of not being able to do it like with someone else in the way it was intended. It felt not cheap, maybe the wrong word, but it felt like a cheapened version of it. If I were just to kind of be like, hey, I'm just going to do this because we have to fill a spot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we have to,
which is
like,
something we discussed.
Right.
Like, and I was like, yeah, go for it, John. I
Right.
am beyond useless.
Yeah. And we also knew like it was going to be like the next one was supposed to be our 50th. So we wanted to do something special for it. So it was going to be kind of like this like holdover bonus episode kind of a thing. And the more I thought about it, I was just like, it doesn't feel quite right. Something, and I still, like, I was telling you this like before we started recording, like I can't still quite understand like what it was that wasn't right. But it was just like, I would rather wait. I'd rather wait and just kind of have this be what it's supposed to be versus like feeling like I had to create something because there was an expectation of creation.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So.
And it makes me think of just like, I think this is where I'm starting to lean to of like quality over quantity of posts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because this is one, like capacity is capacity. And sometimes it's like literally physical capacity, but sometimes it's like mental and emotional and time. Like, so you had like those capacities challenged and I had my like actual physical capacity challenged.
Yeah.
And like the grind culture, you know, we live in doesn't believe that should be a thing.
Right.
But building a business with soul needs to acknowledge that that's actually a thing. And so I find myself like when I first started Empathetic Enneagram, like I was churning out tons of content. Like I was posting every day except for Saturday and Sunday. Yeah. And it was fine. I mean, it was fine, but it burned me out pretty quickly. Yeah. And it didn't bring any results because it was good, decent quality, but it wasn't like deep quality. Sure. And it wasn't like unique in any sort of way. You know, it wasn't like my particular voice necessarily too. And so, trying to lean towards the lesson of like quality and authenticity and depth is probably like more, it is definitely more important than just quantity, which is what the algorithm demands and whatever. Boo.
Right. And I think that we were talking about this before we started recording too. Like there's been this trend, right, of like creators taking a step back and giving themselves space and time.
I saw that a lot.
This summer, like there was a lot of that happening. And so like, I think it's important to remember like that the pace, let's put it in the context of us, maybe like the pace that we need to do is our pace. It's not the pace of what our listeners expect.
We do love you.
We love you.
And we try to meet those expectations.
Yeah. But it's not like we can't, it's unsustainable to try to meet everyone's expectations on all those different levels. And so part of the reason why we did do this, like we came back to do this was because we enjoy it, but we also we wanted to put a plan in place. We wanted to know what the rest of the fall would look like. And now really the expectation that this is me, like that I think we have is just to hit the plan that we've made. Like that's it. Like if we can do that, like we've succeeded. Yeah. So I think that for me is like that slow adjustment, being made towards like, what can we control? We can't control the expectations of the algorithm. We can't control the expectations of the listeners or anybody who consumes any of the content that we make. So we can only control what our expectations are for ourselves. So let's just do that. And that feels a lot better. And it's not like an excuse for ghosting people.
We try not to do that. We try to let you know if we're going to take a break.
Yeah. But it is, I think if we can better communicate that, right, that like our expectation is that we're going to go at our pace. And sometimes that's not going to fit into
every other
typical posting schedule. Well, then you guys know. Yeah. Now you know. And it's,
and we'll be back.
And the goal is to do every other week now. And that is the plan that we've put out. But
I can say
life
this
is life
to our listeners. If you've ever felt this so worried, we vow to do a farewell episode if it ever comes to that. Like we will never just stop posting forever.
Yeah.
That's something I would not do.
No, yeah.
So
I think that's good.
Anyway, yeah. It felt important.
Note.
It felt important to say that because when you were saying, I was like, oh, I wonder if anyone ever thinks that, but
that will just like disappear forever.
yeah, but if you're actually like me and are having a hard time with long form content, we'd probably pop back up in your feed, and you're like, oh yeah. Because that's where I am with pretty much everything right now. Oh yeah, I like listening to this person. I like reading this person's stuff. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, that's good. Anything else you have?
I mean,
lessons.
No, I don't think so. Okay. It's just pivoting again, which I think is, we've talked about like for our own individual businesses. Now you're seeing it a bit, and like John and I did have this pivoting conversation. Like we reevaluated everything when we sat down before we kicked this off.
Yep.
And maybe that's the last lesson. We kind of have talked about is just like taking ourselves seriously enough to plan so that way we give you high quality content. Like if we're not meeting quantity at the sake of quality, we don't want to do that. Then that means we have got to get serious, and we have gotten serious and sat down and like actually planned what the next few episodes are going to look like and what the podcast is going to look like. Yeah. And turns out we can't do that when our families are also eating dinner together. So we scheduled real time.
Right. Yeah.
We
actually have to have like a meeting.
Yeah. Children interrupt a lot.
Yes, they do.
And also, honestly, spouses do too. We love them.
So true.
And they'll be like, have this great idea. You want to come do that though?
Right.
Anyway, they haven't even come back for...
They haven't.
Yeah, sequel to their interview.
The sequel, yeah. Well, and I think it's, it's the value, right? Like the value is different for us to do this versus them, right? Yeah. Like we find different value in this than they would, and that's fine. And what that means is we need set apart time. Yeah. So. Yeah.
And that just leads to better ideas.
Yeah,
honestly,
100%.
When you dedicate the time to it. So.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we did it before the year started, and now we've done it again. And
and we found our rhythm is quarterly.
Yes.
We've decided quarterly planning.
When you don't have a fever and on your deathbed, we're gonna meet quarterly.
Yeah, we're gonna meet quarterly. I do have this paranoia. This is a confession for all the entrepreneurs. Oh my gosh. It's like I was sick for a month, had a month off from sickness, then got sick again. So I'm like, okay, September should be in the clear, but I'm a little nervous about October. I'm kind of like, knock on all the wood. That's what I'm doing. I mean, that is so beyond parent. My doctor has told me a million times. Yeah. You're fine.
Right. You'll be okay.
And I'm taking like 500% of my vitamin C. So October should be great.
Perfect.
It's going to be great.
It's going to be great.
It's going to be great.
Even as like cloudy days and coldness starts to roll in, we'll be all right.
In all the sick season.
I know. Yeah.
Guys, stay healthy out there.
Oh my gosh.
Take your vitamin C and zinc and whatever else it is that makes you
healthy. I
feel
like that needs to be a new sign off. Stay healthy out there.
Stay healthy out there. It could be. This is a wild sidebar, but I did think for our 50th episode, maybe we should have brought in how many times we complained about health issues.
That's funny.
Because I think almost every single Struggle is Real episode, we were like, sickness. Yeah. My kids are constantly sick. I'm constantly sick.
Yeah. This is raising young children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically. John comes out and he's like, like,
I'm sick again.
Yeah. It's more obvious in your voice, I feel like sometimes. But
you get my deep podcast voice. Yeah.
Like Phoebe Buffet.
Yeah.
She likes her sick voice. But anyway.
That's funny.
That's all the lessons I have, John.
So that's a plan.
SOS Summer.
SOS Summer. If you didn't hear the plan, we actually kind of laid out the plan pretty well in episode 50. But if you don't know what it was to do this podcast and let you know where we've been. Yeah. But we're jumping right back in to some interviews, and we want to bring you type 3. Yeah. First.
I'm excited about it.
And then also we're going to do Stuff We Love, Struggles Real, and some end of year reflections all before we hit 2025. So we're excited for it. We're glad to be back, and we hope you're back.
They're back, John. Best listeners in the world. But hey, if you're out there and listening, when you park your car, go ahead and leave a rating and review, which is usually your part.
When you park a car. I was like, where are you going with this?
Well, because I always listen to podcasts in the car. So I'm just going to assume you might be doing that too.
Yeah.
But yeah, leave us a
suggestion. By the way, park the car.
Park the car. Yeah. Then leave a rating and review because it helps us to it helps us with that mean bossy algorithm.
Yeah.
And other things.
And for other people, to figure out where we are. And we'll leave links in the show notes to everything we talked about, which primarily is not a whole lot. But maybe the last episode you can find down there. So
yes, the last episode. And of course, where John and I live on the internet when we are actively posting, those links will be there too. So thanks again for being a part of the EntrepreNINE world.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. See you later.
Bye.